Patrick Cook here. So welcome to session number 22. This will be our final session in this tutorial series, which I've named Fun with Mandelbulb3D Mutations. Let's wrap up this tutorial by just going over a couple tips. All right. One tip is save often. With the MutaGen, it's kind of interesting because it doesn't quite have the ability to look forward and see whether or not there might be an illegal formula combination. When you're using the exchange, add, and remove formulas, the MutaGen may actually assign a formula that doesn't exist, or it may actually, especially in the DE combinate hybrid mode, it may attempt to assign formulas that are incompatible with one another. In that case, your best option is to close the application down and restart, only because the application may become unstable. Okay. Some mutation slots may not render. In my experience, I'm not too worried about that. However, if you want to really be safe, shut the application down and start over again. That may actually be, if you have after all the mutations have rendered, if you have a couple blank spots, that could actually be formula errors that are not reported over in the log area. Okay. Okay, and what you might want to do is keep your resolution low when you're hunting for mutations. I'm referring to this area up here. I mean, if you do something like 800 by 450, okay. What's interesting is that the MutaGen will actually only create these small tiles, which is good, okay. The tiles don't utilize the resolution up here, okay, in the main editor. However, when you double click on it, when you click on it and send it back to the main editor, then the main editor will attempt to redraw or render the image at your resolution. You can save a little bit of time by keeping your resolution low here until you find a Mandelbulb mutation that you want to run with. Okay, just a couple tips. Now, just kind of wrapping up our whole tutorial series here. I talked about use cases. Okay, now one of the use cases is to engage in discovery. Now, what I would suggest when you're engaging in discovery is to take your probability sliders and go full out. Take your strength sliders and go full out. The reason for that is that you want the maximum number of mutations that you can get. And if you high probability and high strength, your mutations are going to be more diverse. So that's what I would recommend if you're in a discovery process, okay? If you are, another use case is to, say, extend somebody else's work or even extend a little bit of your own work. In that case, what I suggest you do is use your MutaGen and keep your changes low. All right. Dial down your strengths. Now, keep in mind that if a mutation type is fully to the left, the strength is irrelevant because that probability is fully turned off. But what I like to do, if I'm only trying to extend somebody else's formula construct or my own, what I do is I tend to just modify the properties, okay? And I keep all of these others either off or extremely low. So let me demonstrate that. I have only the change properties type about midpoint and the strength about midpoint. All right, let's mutate. Now we're mutating the base again, okay? And you see here that I have very minor changes, okay? So a use case where you're attempting to just kind of extend an already existing Mandelbulb, you keep your type, your probability types, and your strengths low, and then you won't deviate so far that you can't, you go beyond what the you go way beyond what your base mutation or Mandelbulb graphic is. Now, I spent a couple sessions talking about using the MutaGen for animation. And I'll tell you, that is really cool. I have made entire animations where I have only used the MutaGen. In other words, I didn't go with the, with the typical navigator approach, okay? I would, with the navigator approach, you bring it in, you can modify the properties, you can modify the iterations, you can modify the camera position, okay? You can use the MutaGen for creating keyframes. Now, my suggestion there is keep your type probability and your strengths low, because you do not want huge differences in the formula construct. Now, when I say formula construct, I'm sure you're well aware that I'm referring to the hybrid mode, the assigned formula slots, and the properties of the formulas, and of course the iteration count. That is a formula construct that the MutaGen will modify according to your configuration of the type probability and the strength options. So when you're building an animation, keep your options set low so that you have mutations that are not so dramatically different in their formula construct that the animation will tend to snap or from one keyframe to the next snap. And the other thing to keep in mind too when you're using MutaGen for animations is that exchanging, adding, and removing formulas does not work with keyframes because the Mandelbulb3D animation or interpolation code or algorithm does not understand, does not handle formula changes from one keyframe to the next. It handles parameter changes okay to a point, not extreme parameter value property changes, not extreme. It handles it okay. The Julia mode, it probably will handle it, maybe not, really depends upon the formula construct. The iteration count, I have found it might work, probably not. The point I'm making is that when you're using the MutaGen to build keyframes, stay away from add, exchange, add, and remove. The Julia and the iteration count settings may work for you, they may not. The only reliable one is minor changes to the parameters of the formulas from one keyframe to the next. Okay. All right, so let's wind this up by saying, by giving you a couple points. If the Mandelbulb 3D application has been frustrating for you, you can use the MutaGen to increase your productivity and creativity by allowing the MutaGen to create mutations that you can use to see whether or not you like something. There's a good discovery. It's a good discovery process. That will help reduce intimidation. Okay? The MutaGen also helps you increase your probability of finding a very interesting Mandelbulb that you can take and run with, either as a still graphic or as the basis of an animation. Okay? You know, the MutaGen tool, it's a gem. It's a hidden, I think, underutilized and not well understood gem of a tool that is built into the Mandelbulb 3D application. It was built in to the it was added to the Mandelbulb 3D application in January of 2016. There's like virtually no documentation. You know, the Mandelbulb GitHub does not mention it at all. If you want to read up a little bit about it, you could take a look at the change.txt that comes along with your Mandelbulb installation directory. And maybe halfway down there, you'll find a brief paragraph or maybe two that talks about the MutaGen. I think that the MutaGen is undervalued, underrated, and when people fire it up, they may think, oh yeah, you know, it's making a bunch of you know, clever designs, but what do I do with it? In this tutorial series, I hope I have really brought the MutaGen more forward. That would help you overcome some intimidation with the Mandelbulb 3D software. It is a little intimidating. It is hard to have a predictability in the graphics that you will create. The MutaGen will help you overcome the frustration and the intimidation that often comes along with the Mandelbulb 3D fractal generator. All right, use the MutaGen to increase your creativity and your productivity. Use it to extend an existing Mandelbulb to see where that Mandelbulb graphic can be taken. And if you really want to delve into the MutaGen, try your hand at using the MutaGen to create keyframes. And I think you'll find that if you utilize the MutaGen in the way I'm suggesting, I think you're going to find that the MutaGen is an extremely valuable tool that comes along with the Mandelbulb 3D software application that is going to dramatically increase your success with the Mandelbulb 3D fractal generator application. So hey, thanks for joining me in this tutorial series. I learned a lot, okay, and I was happy to share it with you. Now, with that said, fire up your Mandelbulb 3D software application and dig into the MutaGen and be creative and be productive and have a good time. All right. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you around.